A millionaire forced his son to marry a humble farmer as punishment, but he was shocked by what his son did next. The tension in Gerald Collins's office was thick, making it hard to breathe. The gleaming mahogany desk, the shelves filled with plaques and awards, and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock only made the room feel heavier. Adam sat opposite his father, his jaw tight, refusing to look Gerald in the eye. "I'm done playing around with you," Gerald finally spoke, his voice hard and unyielding. "The reckless behavior, the parties, the women, all the wasted money, that ends now." Adam shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. He had heard similar lectures before, but this time something about Gerald's tone felt more serious. There was a sense of finality that sent a chill down his spine. "You really think I'll let you destroy everything I've worked for?" Gerald leaned forward, his piercing blue eyes locked onto Adam. No more trust fund, no more unlimited credit cards, and no more running wild. Adam smirked, trying to hide the anxiety rising in his chest. "What's next, Dad? You're gonna ground me. I'm not some kid anymore." Gerald's lips curved into a smile, but it wasn't warm. It was cold and almost menacing. "No, Adam, I'm not grounding you. I'm going to fix you." Adam frowned, confused. "Fix me? What's that supposed to mean?" Gerald's response was quick and direct. "You're getting married," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The words hit Adam like a blow. Marriage? This had to be a sick joke. He let out a sarcastic laugh, shaking his head. "You've really lost it this time, old man. There's no way I'm marrying anyone." Gerald leaned back in his chair, unaffected by Adam's defiance. "You don't have a choice." Adam's heart raced. His father had always been controlling, but this was a new level. "Who do you think you are?" Adam shot back, standing from his chair. "You can't just—" "I can," Gerald cut him off, his voice steady and calm. "And I will." Adam's hands balled into fists, anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Who is she? Some high society lady you found at one of your swanky events?" Gerald's face stayed unreadable. "Her name's Jennifer, and she's a farmer." "A farmer?" Adam's voice cracked in disbelief. This had to be some kind of cruel joke. "Yes," Gerald replied, his tone icy. "She lives in Vermont, works hard, and lives with honor. That's a life you need to understand." Adam stared at his father, speechless. He had expected many things from Gerald: disapproval, anger, even punishment. But this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. "You can't be serious," Adam finally managed, his voice unsteady. "A farmer? In Vermont? You expect me to marry someone I've never met and move to the middle of nowhere?" Gerald didn't blink. "Yes. Think of it as a new beginning." "This is crazy," Adam shouted, his frustration spilling over. "You can't just control my life like this." Gerald stood up, towering over him. "I'm giving you one last chance, Adam. One last chance to prove you can be more than a spoiled, irresponsible brat. You're going to marry Jennifer, live on that farm, and learn what it means to work for something, to build something. And if I don't?" Adam's voice dropped low, filled with defiance. Gerald's eyes narrowed. "Then you're done. No more money, no more support. You'll be cut off completely. And trust me, Adam, without my help, you won't last a month." The silence that followed was suffocating. Adam's mind raced, trying to wrap his head around the ultimatum his father had just thrown at him. He could walk away, forget Jennifer, forget Vermont. But that meant losing everything: no money, no safety net. For the first time in his life, he'd be truly on his own. Or he could go along with this insane plan, marry a total stranger, and live on a farm like an ordinary person. It was humiliating, ridiculous. And yet, the cold resolve in his father's eyes told him this was no bluff. There was no turning back. Adam sank into his chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him, almost unbearable. It wasn't like he had a real choice, not at all. Gerald observed his son, a look of satisfaction settling on his face. "You leave in 2 days. I suggest you get everything sorted." Adam stayed silent. He couldn't respond. The only thing he could do was sit there, drowning in the reality of the life his father had just thrust upon him. As Gerald exited the room, Adam finally exhaled, his breath shaky. His life, as he knew it, was done. The next 2 days were a haze of disbelief and growing anxiety. Adam soon found himself at the end of a dusty dirt road, the kind of scene he'd only ever seen in films. How had his life come to this? It was worlds away from the glamorous parties and the high-rise apartment views he was used to. Vermont had a scent of earth and grass, and the air was way too fresh for his liking. His city shoes sank slightly into the soft dirt as he stared down the narrow road leading to a distant farmhouse. This was where his father had sent him. With a deep sigh, Adam grabbed his suitcase and began the long trek toward the farmhouse, each step feeling like it hammered another nail into the coffin of his old life. The farmhouse was simple, its white paint chipped, and the wraparound porch looked like it hadn't been cared for in years. Still, despite its weathered state, the place had a charm that Adam couldn't completely dismiss. But it wasn't home, and it certainly wasn't where he belonged. As he got closer, the front door squeaked open, and there she was, Jennifer. Adam had no idea what to expect, but the sight of her threw him off guard. She was nothing like he had pictured. Standing on the porch, she wore faded jeans, scuffed-up boots, and a plain plaid shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her expression was serious, without a hint of a smile. But there was an unmistakable strength about her, as if the land itself had toughened her. She looked him up and down with steady eyes, taking in his expensive, completely out-of-place suit. "This is Adam Collins?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of doubt, as if Gerald's claim had been too far-fetched to be true. Adam swallowed, his usual bravado slipping under her firm gaze. "Yeah, that's me," he muttered, trying to sound casual. He dropped his suitcase onto the porch with a heavy thud. Jennifer didn't answer right away. Instead, she crossed her arms, giving Adam a long, hard look, like she was sizing him up. He felt as though her eyes could see through every layer of privilege and entitlement he carried. "I guess your father didn't share much about me," she finally said, her tone steady but firm. "But let me be clear, I didn't ask for this, and I sure didn't want it." Adam blinked, caught off guard. He'd assumed she was in on the whole setup, some small-town girl who was eager to marry into wealth. But her voice made it obvious that she had zero interest in him or anything he thought he had to offer. "Well, that makes 2 of us," Adam shot back, unable to hide the bitterness in his voice. "I didn't exactly volunteer for this either." Jennifer gave a slight nod, but her expression didn't soften. She wasn't there to make him feel better or offer any sort of comfort. "Okay then," she said, glancing at his suitcase. "You're here now, so we might as well get on with it." She turned and walked back into the house, leaving the door open behind her. Adam hesitated, staring after her, before finally grabbing his bag and stepping inside. The house was modest but tidy, with well-worn furniture and small personal touches that gave it a lived-in feel. It was a far cry from his cold, polished penthouse in New York, but there was something undeniably cozy about it. "Your room's down the hall," Jennifer called over her shoulder. "You can settle in, and then I'll show you around." "Right," Adam muttered, dragging his suitcase across the wooden floor. He found the room at the end of the hall, just a simple, no-frills space with a small bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking fields that stretched on for miles. It was nothing like the life of luxury he was used to, but he figured he wouldn't be here for long. In his mind, this was just a temporary stop until he could figure out how to get back to his real life. After tossing his suitcase onto the bed, he headed back to the kitchen, where Jennifer stood by the sink, staring out the window. She didn't acknowledge him when he walked in, and the silence between them felt thick and heavy. "So, what's the plan?" Adam asked, folding his arms and leaning against the doorway. "Are we supposed to, what? Play house? Pretend we're married out here on your little farm?" Jennifer turned to look at him, her expression unchanged. "We don't need to put on any act, Adam. This is the real deal, whether you're ready for it or not." Her words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. There was something in the way she spoke, as if she had already made peace with their reality while he was still wrestling with it. "I run this farm," Jennifer went on, her tone unwavering. "It's my life. My father passed it down to me, and I'm not about to let it crumble because you don't want to be here. So you're going to pull your own weight." "Pull my weight?" Adam arched a brow. "I don't know the first thing about farming." Jennifer's eyes narrowed just a touch. "Then you'll learn." Before he could offer a reply, she turned away toward the window, clearly signaling that the conversation was over. Adam stood there, feeling a blend of frustration and disbelief. He was trapped, stuck in a life he didn't choose, alongside a woman who wasn't about to make things any easier for him. But there was no going back now. The first morning on the farm came way too early for Adam. He was used to sleeping in, waking up whenever he felt like it, often recovering from a night of too much drinking. But here, the rooster's crow signaled the start of a new reality. The sun had barely risen when Jennifer knocked on his door. "Get up," she called, her voice cutting through his sleepiness like a sharp blade. "We've got work to do." Adam groaned, rolling over in the small, creaky bed. Every part of him wanted to ignore her, pull the covers over his head, and pretend he was back in his luxury New York apartment. But reality hit hard. He couldn't afford to resist. Not here. Begrudgingly, he dragged himself out of bed and threw on the same clothes he'd worn the day before. They already felt out of place. Too clean, too neat for the rugged life he was stepping into. When he finally stumbled outside, Jennifer was already in full swing, sleeves rolled up, moving through the barn with ease, feeding the animals. "Grab that shovel," she said without even glancing up. Her voice was all business. "You'll be cleaning out the stalls today," Jennifer said, her tone matter of fact. Adam blinked in disbelief. "Cleaning out what?" She finally glanced up, her expression tightening in irritation. "The stalls, Adam, you know, where the animals stay. They need to be cleaned daily." He glanced at the creatures she was referring to, horses, cows, and a few pigs. The animals seemed to stare right back at him, almost like they could sense his discomfort. Adam winced, his stomach twisting as he realized what cleaning out the stalls actually involved. "You've got to be joking," he muttered under his breath. But Jennifer wasn't joking. She didn't even acknowledge his complaint, simply handed him a shovel and walked off to tend to other chores. Adam stood there for a moment, holding the shovel awkwardly. He had absolutely no clue what he was doing, and it was painfully obvious. With a heavy sigh, he approached the first stall, immediately recoiling from the stench. The reality of farm work hit him like a ton of bricks. It was filthy, stinky, and downright unpleasant. There wasn't a shred of glamour in it, but as much as he hated every minute, he knew complaining wasn't going to help. He was stuck here, and if he didn't at least try to look like he was putting in some effort, Jennifer would probably make his life even harder. He thrust the shovel into the straw, gagging a little at the sight of manure. This was definitely not the kind of work someone like him was supposed to be doing. He was supposed to be attending business meetings, playing golf with clients, and enjoying the perks of his lifestyle. Not this. Never this. As the hours dragged on, Adam's body protested in ways it never had before. His back throbbed every time he bent over, and his arms felt like dead weight. Every part of him wanted to quit, throw down the shovel, and walk away. But there was nowhere to go. Vermont sprawled out around him, miles of countryside that felt like it was trapping him. The isolation made him feel claustrophobic. By midday, Jennifer returned, her face a little less stern, though still hard to read. "How's it coming along?" Adam wiped the sweat from his brow, looking at the half-finished task with a mix of frustration and exhaustion. "How do you think it's going?" he snapped, too worn out to filter his response. Jennifer didn't answer right away. She just stepped over to inspect his progress. "It's not terrible," she said flatly, "but you're not done yet." Adam stared at her in disbelief. "I'm not done yet. I've been working on this for hours," Adam muttered under his breath. "Farm work doesn't care how long you've been at it. It only cares if you finish," Jennifer replied as she handed him a bottle of water and turned back to her chores. Watching her walk away, frustration bubbled up inside him. This wasn't the kind of life he ever imagined. He wasn't cut out for this kind of labor, spending every day breaking his back to keep the farm running. This wasn't supposed to be his life, yet here he was. There was no getting out of it. By the time the sun began its descent, Adam's whole body screamed in pain. Aches he hadn't known were possible. Covered in dirt and grime, his hands raw and blistered from hours of shoveling, he collapsed against the barn after finishing the last task. He was too drained to even move. Jennifer reappeared, this time carrying 2 plates of food, simple sandwiches and a couple of apples. Without a word, she handed him one and sat down beside him, her gaze drifting over the fields. "You'll get used to it," she said softly, breaking the silence. Adam took a bite of his sandwich, too worn out to respond. "I don't know if I ever will." Jennifer glanced his way, her face unreadable. "You will," she said firmly. "People can adjust to a lot more than they realize." They sat there in silence, the heaviness of the day pressing down around them. The farm had grown still, the animals quiet, as the setting sun stretched shadows across the fields. For the first time since he arrived, a strange calmness crept over Adam. It wasn't the life he had wanted, but there was something about its simplicity that for a moment eased the lost feeling in him. But the calm was fleeting. The cool evening breeze stirred the trees, reminding Adam of the life he had left behind, the one waiting for him if he ever found a way out of this place. Vermont might have been peaceful, but it wasn't home. Not yet. As days turned into weeks, Adam fell into the relentless rhythm of farm life. He woke before sunrise, worked until exhaustion, slept, and then repeated the routine. Despite himself, the farm's daily grind was becoming part of him, whether he wanted it to or not. Yet, no matter how hard he worked, the tension between him and Jennifer lingered. They spoke only when necessary, their conversations clipped and businesslike, leaving a distance neither seemed willing to cross. Adam wasn't used to being brushed aside, especially not by a woman. In New York, he was always the one people noticed. But here, he was just another pair of hands, helping out. One night, after a grueling day working in the fields, Adam found himself pacing the kitchen, the quiet of the house, unsettling him. Jennifer was outside, finishing up with the animals for the evening. He could see her through the window, moving with the same steady determination she always had. There was something about her independence that bothered him. She was strong, self-sufficient, and seemed completely indifferent to his presence. It felt like an insult. Grabbing a glass of water, Adam leaned against the counter, looking out at the fading light in the sky. His frustration was growing, and there was no way to release it. He'd never felt so powerless in his entire life. This was supposed to be a short-term thing, a punishment, sure, but one he could handle until his father came to his senses. But now, he wasn't so sure. Gerald hadn't called, hadn't checked on him, hadn't even sent a message. It felt like he'd been left here to fend for himself. The door creaked open, and Jennifer came into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She glanced at Adam, but didn't say a word, heading to the sink to wash up. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the weight of things left unsaid. Adam couldn't hold back any longer. "Do you like this?" he asked, his voice sharper than he meant. Jennifer didn't turn. "Like what?" "This." Adam motioned around the kitchen, his frustration clear. "This whole situation, having me here. Do you get a kick out of watching me mess up out there every day looking like a fool?" Jennifer finally turned around, her expression unreadable as usual. "I didn't ask for this any more than you did." "That's not an answer," Adam shot back, his voice rising. "You've treated me like an outsider since day one. I get it, I'm no farmer, but I'm trying. Doesn't that matter to you?" Jennifer sighed and put the towel down on the counter. "Trying? You've been here, what, a month? You still act like this is all temporary, like you're just waiting to leave any day now. I've spent my whole life on this farm. This isn't some punishment to me, Adam. This is my life." Adam blinked, caught off guard by the strength in her words. He hadn't quite seen it that way before. To him, this place felt like a temporary cage, but to her, it was home. "I never wanted to be here," Adam muttered, raking his fingers through his hair. "None of this makes sense." Jennifer folded her arms, her eyes narrowing. "No, it doesn't. But that doesn't change the fact that you are here. And if you're going to stick around, stop acting like the world owes you something. No one's going to babysit you out here." Adam felt frustration bubbling up again. "I didn't ask for anyone to babysit me, but I'm not used to being treated like I'm invisible." Jennifer's gaze softened a bit, but only slightly. "I don't treat you like you're invisible, Adam. I treat you like a grown man who still has a lot to figure out. Do you want me to cheer you on for every little thing? That's not how things work here." Her words stung, but Adam couldn't deny she had a point. All his life, he'd been showered with praise for the smallest of achievements, always surrounded by people who told him how great he was. Out here, there were no free passes, and Jennifer wasn't about to offer compliments just for trying. "I'm trying," Adam repeated, his voice quieter now. "I really am." Jennifer studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "I know, but trying's not enough. You've got to be all in. You need to want to be here, not just go through the motions until you can leave." Adam looked away, unsure how to answer. Did he really want to be here? Not exactly, but he didn't want to head back to New York either. Not yet, anyway. The idea of going back to his old life, where everything was handed to him, didn't sit right anymore. Something inside him had changed, even if he wasn't ready to admit it yet. "I guess we'll see," he mumbled, mostly to himself. Jennifer didn't push any further. She turned back toward the sink, focusing on what she had been doing before. The conversation was over, but the tension still hung in the air, a quiet reminder of the distance that remained between them. Adam lingered in the kitchen a bit longer, letting the silence settle over him. He wasn't used to feeling this out of control, this powerless. But maybe, just maybe, that was the whole point. Maybe that's exactly what his father had wanted. As Adam walked back to his small bedroom, frustration weighed heavily on him. Yet beneath that, there was a glimmer of something different, something that felt a bit like determination. The days passed, each blending into the next, but something about Adam's routine was starting to change. He still despised the early mornings, the exhausting work, and the scorching summer heat that relentlessly pounded down on him. Yet, in the repetitive nature of farm life, he began noticing things, subtle things. One of those was the quiet, the stillness of the mornings, long before the rest of the world seemed to wake up. Back in New York, his mornings had been filled with noise, blaring horns, ringing phones, and the constant rush of people on the move. But out here, the only sounds were the gentle rustling of the trees, the distant clucking of chickens, and the soft breeze sweeping across the fields. At first, the silence unnerved him, almost as if it was too loud. But now he found it strangely peaceful. Even though he still felt out of place, there were brief moments, like when he stood in the fields with the sun dipping low on the horizon, where he felt connected to something bigger than himself. It was a feeling he didn't know how to make sense of. One evening, after a long day of hauling hay, he sat on the porch steps, gazing out at the fields. Jennifer was out tending to the chickens, her silhouette framed against the fading daylight. She moved with calm efficiency, always working, always focused. Watching her, Adam couldn't help but feel a reluctant respect. She ran the farm as though it was in her blood, with a drive he'd never seen in anyone before. As she walked back toward the house, she caught his eye, and rather than look away, she came up the steps and sat down next to him, her hands resting on her knees. For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence, the only sounds being the faint buzz of insects and the occasional chirp of a bird settling in for the night. "You're improving," Jennifer said at last, breaking the quiet. Her voice wasn't exactly warm, but there was a hint of acknowledgement in it. Her comment caused Adam to raise an eyebrow. "At what? Shoveling manure?" Jennifer's lips twitched, as if she was holding back a smile. "At the work. You're not as useless as when you first got here," Adam chuckled. "Well, I guess I should thank you. That's probably the nicest thing you've said to me in weeks." Jennifer didn't reply right away. Instead, she leaned against the porch railing, her gaze fixed on the farm, stretching out before them. "This isn't easy, Adam," she said after a pause. "Running a place like this, it takes everything. Some people can't handle it. I've seen them crack under the pressure." Adam turned his head toward her, listening closely. Her voice carried a sense of exhaustion, but it wasn't defeat. It was the exhaustion that came from shouldering a burden alone for far too long. It suddenly hit him just how much Jennifer had been doing on her own, day in and day out, without complaining, without asking for help. "I don't know how you manage," Adam admitted quietly. "I can barely keep up, and you make it look effortless." Jennifer shook her head slightly. "It's far from easy, but it's what has to be done. If I don't step up, this place falls apart. My dad left it to me, and I'll be damned if I let it go down." There was something about the way she spoke that struck a chord in Adam. Her words weren't just practical, they carried a deeper meaning. This farm wasn't just land to Jennifer, it was her history, her family, her identity. "I've never really had that," Adam said, almost to himself. "That sense of purpose. I thought I was supposed to follow in my dad's footsteps, but it never meant anything to me. It was just expected." Jennifer glanced at him, her expression softening. "Maybe this is your chance to find something that does matter to you." Adam didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what actually mattered to him anymore. His old life in New York had been all about image, money, status, power. None of it had ever felt genuine. But here, despite the hard work and loneliness, there was something real about it. The labor had meaning, the results were immediate. It wasn't flashy, but it was honest. "I don't know," Adam finally said. "Maybe I'm still figuring that out." Jennifer didn't push him. Instead, she stood, dusting off her jeans. "Well, we'll find out. For now, we've got more work tomorrow." Adam watched her walk inside, leaving him alone on the porch. The sky had deepened to a soft blue, with the first stars beginning to twinkle. He sat there for a while, thinking about what she had said, about finding something real, something that mattered. It was a simple thought, but it kept nagging at him. Maybe Jennifer had a point. Maybe this was his shot at finding something genuine, something that truly mattered. The idea made him uneasy, though. He had spent so much of his life hiding behind his money and status that he wasn't sure he even knew how to be anyone different. As the evening deepened, Adam finally got up and walked inside, the stillness of the farm wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like he was barely staying afloat. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to swim. Over the next few days, a sense of routine began to take hold of Adam's life on the farm. He was still far from getting the hang of things, but something had shifted. Instead of dragging his feet, he started each day with a little more resolve. His hands were still raw, and his muscles hurt in places he hadn't even known could ache, but it wasn't as crushing as it had been at first. One morning, as the sun started to rise, Adam found himself outside early, waiting for Jennifer to assign his tasks for the day. He wasn't sure when it happened, but at some point he had stopped dreading the mornings. There was something soothing about the quiet before the farm fully woke up. Standing there, with the cool morning air on his face and the distant sounds of the animals stirring, he felt a strange sense of calm. Jennifer emerged from the house soon after, her usual serious expression in place. She shot him a quick glance, noticing he was already outside but didn't comment. Instead, she headed toward the barn, and Adam silently followed. "I'm going to teach you how to care for the horses today," Jennifer said as they reached the stable. "It's not just feeding them or cleaning up. You need to understand how to take care of them properly." Adam nodded, though he wasn't quite sure what she meant. He had seen horses before at country clubs or racetracks, but never up close and definitely never cared for one. Still, he followed her into the barn, trying to act like he knew what he was doing. Jennifer led him to a tall bay horse, its rich brown coat glowing in the soft morning light. "This is Dan," she said, patting the horse's neck gently. "He's one of the older ones, but he's strong and dependable." Adam stood awkwardly, watching Jennifer work with Dan, her movements steady and assured. She showed him how to groom the horse, explaining how crucial it was to look for any injuries or skin issues. Afterward, she passed the brush to him. "Your turn," she said with a casual nod. Adam paused briefly, feeling unsure, but then he grabbed the brush and cautiously approached Dan. The horse shifted slightly, its big eyes watching Adam with a calm curiosity. Adam could feel the animal's sheer strength and size, and for a moment, he wondered if the horse could sense how new he was at this and would get spooked, but Dan stayed steady, as if patiently waiting, while Adam started brushing his coat. Slowly, Adam found a rhythm, his motions becoming more fluid and sure. Jennifer observed for a bit, then moved on to another horse, giving him space to work. As Adam worked on Dan, he began to feel a quiet connection that caught him off guard. The task was repetitive, calming, and for the first time, he didn't feel completely lost. When he finished, Jennifer came back over, giving the horse a once-over with a critical eye. "Not bad," she said simply, with no hint of condescension. "You're getting the hang of it." Adam felt a small but satisfying sense of pride. It wasn't much, but it was the first time she acknowledged his progress without any snide remarks. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to earn her respect. The rest of the day flew by in a flurry of farm chores. Jennifer kept teaching him the ropes, how to fix a fence, how to properly feed and water the animals, even how to drive the old tractor that had been sitting by the barn for as long as Adam could remember. He wasn't great at any of it yet, but he was improving, little by little. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, Adam was worn out, his muscles aching from the hard work. But this time, he didn't feel defeated. There was a small sense of pride in what he'd accomplished. Even if it wasn't much, it was enough to keep him moving forward. As they wrapped up the day, Jennifer handed him a bucket of water and nodded toward the barn. "You're in charge of the horses now," she said, her tone firm. "Make sure they're taken care of every morning and night." Adam blinked, caught off guard. "You're putting me in charge already?" Jennifer just shrugged. "You've shown you can handle it. If you mess up, we'll figure it out soon enough." It wasn't exactly a ringing vote of confidence, but Adam still felt a sense of pride welling up inside. She was entrusting him with something important, something that had real significance for the farm. This wasn't just about appearances anymore. It was real. He had a part to play now. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Adam found himself staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day. It had been tough, tougher than anything he'd faced back in New York, but it also felt right somehow. The work might not have been glamorous or exciting, but it was genuine, solid. For the first time in a long while, Adam felt like he was actually contributing to something meaningful. He couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had happened, but somewhere along the line, his thoughts had shifted from finding a way off the farm to wondering if there might actually be something worth sticking around for. It was a quiet realization, one he wasn't quite ready to fully embrace yet, but as he drifted to sleep, the thought lingered, like a seed waiting to take root. The storm arrived out of nowhere. The early morning sky had been a dull gray, heavy with clouds, but by noon, the wind was howling through the trees and shaking the old farmhouse's windows. Adam had been out in the field when the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, and in no time, the sky unleashed a downpour, turning the ground into a swampy mess. "Get the animals inside," Jennifer yelled over the wind as she ran by, her hair flying in every direction. Adam raced after her, his feet sinking into the mud as the rain poured down even harder. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside the barn, the horses were restless, picking up on the storm's intensity. Adam jumped right in, helping Jennifer secure the doors and make sure all the animals were safe. His heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through him as the wind slammed against the barn walls, rattling the boards and making the whole place feel shaky. "Are they all in?" Adam asked, out of breath, wiping the rain from his face. Jennifer nodded, her face tight with concern. "We need to check the fences. If the storm knocks any of them over, the animals could escape." Without a second thought, the two of them rushed back out into the storm, the rain pelting their faces as they ran toward the far end of the field where the fence stretched out. Adam could hardly see a few feet ahead through the downpour, but Jennifer moved with determination, taking the lead. When they got to the fence, they saw parts of it already tilting dangerously, with the wind threatening to tear it down at any moment. "We have to brace it," Jennifer yelled, her voice barely cutting through the roar of the wind. Adam grabbed a hammer and nails from the shed nearby, his hands trembling as he worked to secure the fence. The rain was unforgiving, soaking through his clothes and making every movement harder. Jennifer worked right next to him, her hands quick and steady despite the storm raging around them. There was no time for words, only action. Every moment felt like a race against the storm. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they fastened the last section of the fence. Both of them stood there, breathing heavily, soaked to the bone and completely worn out. The wind hadn't eased up, but the fence held firm. For now, the animals were safe. Adam glanced at Jennifer, her face smeared with rain and dirt, her hair sticking to her forehead. There was a fierceness in her eyes, a strength he couldn't help but admire. She met his gaze and gave him a slight nod, a quiet acknowledgement of what they had accomplished together. But it was enough. They had weathered the worst of it, side by side. "Let's get inside," Jennifer said, her voice raspy from yelling over the wind. "We won't do the farm any good if we're both sick tomorrow." They headed back to the house, the storm still howling outside. Inside, the warmth felt almost unreal after battling the elements. They stood in the entryway, dripping water onto the floor, too drained to speak for a moment. "Thanks," Jennifer said softly, breaking the silence. "For helping." Adam, still catching his breath, shrugged. "Like I had much of a choice," he said with a grin. Jennifer gave a small smile, one of the first he'd seen since he arrived. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stir something inside him again. That slow, quiet feeling that maybe, just maybe, they were starting to understand each other. "I'll start a fire," Adam said, surprising himself. He didn't quite know why he offered, but after working alongside Jennifer for several weeks, he had learned enough about getting by in this place that it didn't seem like an impossible task anymore. The fire crackled in the cozy living room, while the storm outside pounded against the windows. Adam sat across from Jennifer, the warmth from the fire slowly bringing life back to his cold, sore limbs. Neither of them spoke for a while, the silence between them finally feeling easy. "It was like this when my dad passed away," Jennifer said out of the blue, her voice soft, almost drowned out by the crackling fire. Adam looked up, startled by her change in tone. "A storm, I mean. Just like today, it hit the farm hard. We lost half our crops that year." Adam didn't know how to respond. He'd never really asked Jennifer much about her life before he came here. He'd been too caught up in his own troubles to care. But now, listening to her talk about her father, he realized how little he actually knew about the woman sitting across from him. "How old were you?" he asked quietly. 23, Jennifer answered, her gaze locked on the flames. He'd been sick for a while, but it still felt so sudden. One day he was here, and the next, everything was different. It was just me trying to keep the farm going. Adam leaned back, taking in her words. He'd always seen the farm as a burden, something his dad had pushed onto him. But for Jennifer, it was her inheritance, her duty. She had fought for this place on her own and kept it running through pure determination. "I didn't realize," Adam said softly. "I never thought about what this farm meant to you. I've been so wrapped up in how much I hate being here that I didn't stop to think about what it's been like for you." Jennifer's expression softened, and she looked him in the eye. "I didn't expect you to," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "You weren't sent here because you wanted to be, but that doesn't mean you can't learn to care about it." Silence settled between them again, and the weight of her words lingered. Adam wasn't sure how to respond, or even what he was feeling. But he knew that something had shifted between them. Something small, but meaningful. For the first time, he didn't just see Jennifer as the woman he had been forced to marry. He saw her as someone who had fought her own battles, someone who had earned her place in the world. And for the first time, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he could find something to fight for too. The days after the storm were quieter, filled with more reflection. The rain had left the air heavy and the fields drenched, but the farm stood strong, just like Adam and Jennifer. For Adam, though, something had shifted during that storm. The grueling work and endless tasks, once feeling like punishment, didn't weigh on him the same way anymore. He was still worn out at the end of each day, still unsure of his place in this unfamiliar life. But there was a growing confidence inside him, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he could handle it. Then, the phone rang. It had been almost 2 months since Adam last heard from his father, Gerald, the man who'd sent him off to Vermont like a child being scolded. Adam had expected a call much sooner, but the silence had stretched on until now. Jennifer was outside while Adam picked up the phone, wiping his hands on his jeans and glancing through the kitchen window. Gerald's voice was sharp, all business as usual, lacking any fatherly warmth. "Adam," he said, skipping any pleasantries. "How's life on the farm?" Adam paused, unsure of how to answer. "It's fine," he responded cautiously. "What's this about, Dad?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, the kind of silence Adam had learned to fear. His father was always calculating, always strategizing, always a step ahead. And Adam knew this wasn't just a friendly call. "I've got an offer for you," Gerald finally said, his voice smooth. "You've been out there long enough. I think it's time for you to come home." Adam's heart raced. He had been waiting for this, waiting for his father to call him back, to offer him an escape. But now that it was happening, something felt off. He glanced out the window again, seeing Jennifer working in the distance, her silhouette against the fading light. "What kind of offer?" Adam asked slowly, wary of where this was going. "You've shown you can handle some responsibility," Gerald said. "At least, in that you haven't completely failed. I'm willing to bring you back into the company, but there are conditions." Of course there were conditions. There always were with Gerald Collins. Nothing ever came without a catch. "And what exactly are those terms?" Adam asked, his jaw clenched. "You'll move back to New York, take a position at the company, and leave the farm." "Leave Jennifer," Gerald responded, his voice casual, as if they were merely discussing the weather. "This was never supposed to be permanent, Adam. I didn't expect you to stay there forever. It's time to come home now." Adam's stomach twisted at the cold finality in his father's words. Leave the farm. Leave Jennifer. For Gerald it was all so clear-cut, so black and white. Adam could feel the weight of the ultimatum pressing down on him, suffocating him. This is what he had wanted all along, right? To leave, to go back to his old life, to escape the farm and everything that came with it. But now, standing in the kitchen of that small farmhouse, his hands gripping the counter, Adam wasn't so sure. He had despised this place when he first arrived, hated the work, hated the solitude, hated everything about it. But in recent weeks, something had changed. The farm had become more than just a form of punishment. It had become something real. And Jennifer? Jennifer wasn't just the woman he'd been forced to marry. She had become something more, someone more. He didn't yet know exactly what she meant to him, but the thought of leaving her, of walking away from this life to return to the cold, impersonal world of New York, filled his chest with a sense of loss he hadn't anticipated. "I don't know," Adam said softly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Gerald's voice turned steely. "This isn't up for debate, Adam. I'm offering you a way out. Don't be foolish. You don't belong out there. Come back where you belong." Adam looked out the window, his mind swirling. This was his chance to get back everything he'd once had. The money, the power, the life he knew. But at what cost? Could he really leave the farm, leave Jennifer? Could he walk away from the strange, uncertain future that had started to grow here? "I need to think about it," Adam finally said, his voice strained. Gerald's silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Don't take too long," he said coldly. "You don't have all the time in the world." The call dropped, and Adam was left standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, stunned by his father's harsh ultimatum hanging over him like a heavy storm cloud. The next morning, Adam woke up with an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. His father's offer loomed large, overshadowing everything he did. It felt less like an opportunity and more like a test, a new move in Gerald's endless game of control. But this time, the stakes were higher. Adam went through his usual morning tasks, though his mind wasn't on the work. His thoughts wandered to Jennifer, the farm, New York, and the life he had once been so eager to get back to, now in stark contrast with the unexpected life he'd found here. The two worlds seemed worlds apart, but Gerald was forcing him to pick between them. He couldn't dodge the conversation any longer. After dinner, Adam found Jennifer in the living room, reading by the firelight. She glanced up as he entered, but stayed silent, waiting for him to start. "We need to talk," Adam said, his voice tight with tension. Jennifer set her book down, her face serious. "What's going on?" she asked. Adam took a deep breath, his words heavy. "My father called yesterday. He gave me a way out." Jennifer didn't react at first. She just stared at him, her face unreadable. "A way out?" she repeated, her tone neutral. "He wants me to come back to New York and take a position at the company," Adam explained, pausing. "But—" His chest tightened as he prepared to finish the thought. "If I go back, I have to leave the farm." "Leave you?" Jennifer's expression remained the same, but Adam saw something flicker in her eyes, something he couldn't quite grasp. She stood and walked over to the window, looking out into the dark night. The silence between them felt thick, almost unbearable. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked softly, still not turning to face him. Adam ran a hand through his hair, feeling utterly lost. "I don't know. This is what I wanted, right? To go back, to leave all this behind." Jennifer turned, her gaze steady, but with a sadness that cut deep. "Is this really what you're after?" The question lingered, and for the first time, Adam didn't have a quick reply. His entire life had been a pursuit of what he believed he desired: wealth, prestige, power. He wasn't so sure anymore, though, as he stood in this old farmhouse amid the serene stillness of the countryside. "I'm not sure," he finally admitted, his voice barely more than a murmur. "Everything I thought I wanted, it doesn't feel right anymore. Not after being here. Not after meeting you." Jennifer's expression softened as she moved a little closer. "Maybe you've changed. Maybe this place, this life, has become something more than just a consequence." Adam gazed at her, the flickering firelight playing across her face. She had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together. But now he noticed a fragility in her eyes, an unspoken question about whether he would stay or leave. Suddenly, the choice didn't seem so difficult. He reached out, gently taking her hand. "I don't want to leave, Jennifer. I don't want to go back to New York and act like none of this ever happened. I don't want to act like you don't matter." Jennifer blinked, her breath hitching in her chest. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I want to stay," Adam said, the words pouring out with a certainty he hadn't felt in weeks. "I want to stay here. With you." For a moment, Jennifer simply looked at him, as if trying to decide whether or not to trust what he was saying. Then, slowly, a small, hesitant smile appeared. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," Adam replied, pulling her closer. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Jennifer's smile widened, and for the first time, Adam saw a softness in her that she had hidden for so long. She wrapped her arms around him, and they stood there, locked in each other's embrace, the weight of the decision lifting from Adam's shoulders. The next morning, when Gerald called again, Adam picked up the phone with newfound clarity. "I've made my choice," Adam said with conviction, his voice steady. Gerald didn't respond right away. The silence on the other end of the call was thick with tension. And then, Adam spoke up, the words flowing smoothly now. "I'm staying here," he said. "I'm not coming back to New York, not to the company, and not to the life I used to have. I'm staying on the farm." Another pause followed, and when Gerald finally responded, his voice was icy. "You're throwing everything away, Adam." For what? A farm? Some woman you barely know. You're making a huge mistake. Adam clenched his jaw, but his determination remained strong. Maybe so, but it's my mistake to make. The silence on the line was overwhelming, and for a moment Adam thought his father might hang up. But then Gerald's voice came through again, low and threatening. If you walk away from this, you're on your own. No money, no help. You'll be cut off completely. Adam inhaled deeply, letting the full impact of his father's words hit him. He had expected this. He knew Gerald wouldn't let him go without a fight. But now, standing in the modest farmhouse that had become his home, with Jennifer nearby, the threat didn't intimidate him anymore. That's fine, Adam said quietly. I don't need your money. For the first time in his life, Adam felt truly liberated. The conversation left a heavy weight on his chest, but as he hung up the phone, a strange sense of calm washed over him. It was odd, severing ties with the world he had been a part of for so long. The wealth, the influence, the control, gone. But in its place was something different, something real and grounded. He stepped onto the porch, where the late afternoon sun painted the fields in soft, golden hues. In the distance, he saw Jennifer, busy with the animals as usual, and he couldn't help but smile. Everything about this life and about her felt right in a way he couldn't fully describe. Just as he was about to join her, a sleek black car pulled up to the farmhouse, its polished exterior out of place in the rustic setting. Adam's stomach twisted when he saw who stepped out. Gerald Collins, as sharp and imposing as ever, walking toward the house with purpose. His suit was spotless, not a single hair out of place, as if the dirt roads and the fields didn't exist in his reality. Adam hadn't seen his father in months, and his sudden arrival felt like a punch to the gut. Jennifer noticed Gerald from afar and paused, walking toward the house cautiously, sensing the tension. "What are you doing here?" Adam asked, stepping off the porch to confront his father. Gerald's cold eyes swept across the farmhouse, the fields, the animals. "I needed to see it with my own eyes, to figure out what could possibly drive my son to turn away from everything I've spent my life building." Adam's jaw tightened as he fought to contain his frustration, his fists clenching tightly at his sides. "I'm not turning my back on anything," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm just trying to build my own life, something you've never allowed me to do." Gerald let out a cold, bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Your own life? Here? On this farm? You really believe this is some kind of bold rebellion, Adam? But it's not. You're throwing away everything you've been given for what? A woman you barely even know. A life you're not even made for." Jennifer, who had been standing quietly beside Adam, took a step forward, her expression calm but cautious. She met Gerald's gaze without hesitation, her chin raised, standing firm in the face of his intimidating presence. Adam glanced at her and felt a swell of pride for the strength she was showing at that moment, refusing to back down. "This isn't about rebellion," Adam said, his voice steady and unwavering. "It's about me, choosing something different, something real." Gerald's eyes narrowed, and a cruel smile spread across his face. "You think this is real?" Gerald mocked. "You have no idea what's really going on here." Adam frowned, his heart beginning to race with unease. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice edged with confusion. Gerald's gaze flickered toward Jennifer, and then back to Adam, his eyes icy and calculating. "The marriage," he began slowly, savoring each word. "You think it was my idea, don't you? That I was the one who arranged all of this?" Adam's stomach twisted in knots, dread creeping up his spine. "What are you trying to say?" he asked, his voice tense. Gerald crossed his arms over his chest, his expression unreadable, as if he was holding back something explosive. "Jennifer came to me first," he said, his words deliberate and heavy. "She needed money to save this place. The farm was on the verge of collapse, and she was desperate. She proposed the marriage herself and said she'd do whatever it took to keep this farm alive. I didn't have to do much, just saw an opportunity to teach you a lesson." The revelation hit Adam like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He turned to Jennifer, his mind racing, his heart pounding in his chest. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jennifer's face had gone pale, but she didn't look away. Her calm demeanor remained, though her eyes now held a deep sadness Adam hadn't noticed before. "It's true," she admitted quietly, her voice steady. "I did go to your father, but not because I wanted to manipulate you. I did it because I had no other choice. The farm was in deep trouble, and I couldn't just watch it fall apart. I did what I had to do to keep things afloat." Adam's heart pounded, a mix of frustration and betrayal swirling through him. He felt completely caught off guard, like the rug had been pulled out from under his feet. All along, he'd thought Gerald had masterminded everything, pulling all the strings. But now, learning that Jennifer had been involved, it changed everything for him. "You should have been upfront with me," Adam said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You should have told me the truth." Jennifer's eyes welled with regret, but she stood her ground. "I know, I should have," she admitted, "but I didn't know how. I was terrified you'd leave, and then the farm would be finished. I thought if we could just push through it, things might turn around." Gerald watched the scene unfold with a smug grin, clearly relishing the chaos he'd created. "See, Adam, this was never about love or starting fresh. It's always been about survival, just like everything else in life." Adam turned to face his father, his anger boiling over. "You don't get to come here and act like you're some kind of savior. You shoved me into this mess. You set this all up, knowing exactly how it'd play out. You don't care about me. You never did." Gerald's face hardened, the smirk vanishing. "I was trying to save you from yourself, Adam. You've always been soft, always chasing after pointless dreams. This was supposed to teach you something." Adam shook his head and stepped forward. "I'm not soft, not anymore. Maybe you set things in motion, but I stayed because I wanted to. And now, I'm choosing to stay." Gerald's eyes narrowed, his voice turning icy. "You're making a big mistake." "Maybe," Adam replied, his voice steady. "But it's my mistake to make." The silence between them hung heavy for a moment. Gerald stood there, his jaw clenched, clearly angry that Adam wasn't caving. But Adam didn't care anymore. For the first time, he felt like he had control over his own life. Without another word, Gerald turned and stormed back to his car. The sound of the engine roaring to life shattered the quiet, and in seconds, he was gone, leaving Adam and Jennifer in the dimming light. Adam turned back to Jennifer, his heart still heavy. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. Jennifer looked up at him, her eyes full of sorrow. "Because I was scared." Adam hesitated, his voice low but calm. "I was scared, Jennifer. Scared that if you knew the truth, you'd walk away, and I couldn't bear the thought of you leaving." He exhaled deeply, his frustration easing as he stepped closer, gently holding her hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Jennifer. Not now, not ever." Jennifer's eyes met his, full of uncertainty. "Even after all that's happened?" she asked quietly. Adam nodded, his words firm but kind. "Yes, even after everything." The days following Gerald's visit passed in a quiet stillness, yet the weight of the revelation hung between them, unspoken but palpable. The truth had surfaced, leaving wounds that couldn't be ignored. But in the midst of the pain, something deeper began to take root. A determination to move forward together, no matter the cost. Adam had made his choice, and he wasn't backing down. The farm, this life he was creating with Jennifer, had become something tangible, something no amount of wealth or success in New York could ever replace. But above all, Jennifer had become more than just the woman his father had pushed him to marry. She had become his true partner, and Adam was determined not to let the past tear them apart. One evening, as the warm glow of the sunset bathed the fields, Adam found Jennifer sitting quietly on the porch, her hands resting in her lap, gazing over the land she had fought so hard to hold on to. He sat beside her, the old porch creaking under his weight. "You've been awfully quiet," Adam said softly, glancing at her. Jennifer remained silent at first, but after a moment she sighed, her body relaxing just a bit. "I've been thinking," she said. Adam waited, knowing Jennifer always chose her words with care. Over the months, he had learned to give her the time and space to express herself fully. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I've been thinking about us, how we got here, everything that's happened. I can't pretend it didn't hurt, Adam. The way things started between us, and how I hid the truth from you. It wasn't fair." Adam nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand," he said gently, "but I also know why you did it. I see that now." Jennifer looked at him, her eyes reflecting a jumble of emotions, regret, hope, and something else Adam couldn't quite put into words. "I just wasn't sure. You'd still want to stay after knowing everything." Adam reached over and took her hand, holding it firmly. "I'm here, Jennifer," he said, his voice steady. "And I'm not leaving. I'm here because I want to be, Jennifer, not because of any deal or my father. I'm staying because this is what I want, us." Jennifer blinked, her lips trembling as she fought back the tears. It wasn't often you saw her this exposed, this raw. But Adam could feel the weight of this moment. It was as real as it could be. She had been carrying so much on her own, and now she was finally letting him in. "You have no idea what that means to me," Jennifer whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Adam gently squeezed her hand, his thumb lightly brushing across her knuckles. "I think I do. We've both been through a lot, and I'm not going to pretend it's going to be easy, but I'm ready for whatever comes." Jennifer nodded, meeting his gaze. "So am I." For a while, they just sat there, the silence between them warm and filled with hope. The sun was slowly sinking behind the hills, casting a golden light across the fields. It was the kind of quiet evening that made anything feel possible. Even after all the pain and doubt, Adam spoke softly. "I think this is the first time I've felt like I really belong here." His voice was calm, carrying a peace he hadn't known before. Jennifer smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You do belong, Adam. You've changed. You've found where you're supposed to be." And he couldn't argue with that. Someone who understood the value of perseverance, hard work, and love had long since taken the place of the original visitor to the farm. The farm had tested him in ways he never imagined, and in return, it had given him more than he ever thought possible. "I guess I have," he agreed, his heart full. "And I'm not leaving." As days turned into weeks, Adam and Jennifer worked side by side, building their life together. What once felt like his father's punishment had turned into a place of growth and new beginnings. They mended fences, cared for the animals, and talked about their future with a newfound sense of hope. One evening, as they stood by the barn watching the sunset, Adam looked at Jennifer, feeling grateful for the life they were creating. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful. "This is so much more than I ever thought I'd have. More than I ever thought I'd want." Jennifer smiled softly, her hand slipping into his. "Me too." They stood quietly, watching the sun dip below the horizon, knowing that while challenges still lay ahead, they were ready to face them together. The farm wasn't just a piece of land anymore. It was a testament to everything they had been through and everything they still had to build. And as the stars began to light up the night sky, Adam knew he had found something far more valuable than anything he could have in New York. He had found a purpose, love, and the life he never realized he needed. Together, they were prepared for whatever came next.